Well, good morning. Welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Petra, Weldes, spiritual director here. And if you don't know, our music director, Andrew Tinker, was playing at the Wildflower Festival yesterday, right? And Jonathan, I think,
awesome.
It's pretty awesome. Jonathan, weren't you there as well? Jonathan Fisher was there as well. It's very cool. So you can see our fabulous folks. Matt, were you out there too? Were you out there? No? But he's definitely out there. He just wasn't at the festival. Okay, I don't get him in very often, so when I do, you have to really appreciate it. And I'm so delighted that you're with us. I'm Petra Weldes, spiritual director here, and so we are, we are deep into our science lessons. So if you thought you were coming to the church this morning, well, that is true, but you've also come to science class. And so we are continuing on with our companion book, Shortcut to a Miracle. If you have not gotten it, I cannot highly recommend it enough. This is Science of Mind meets Science, or Spirituality meets Science. And we are really working deeply into how do we integrate this in our own lives. So that's what we're up to, and Tracy Brown will be finishing it out the end of this month and really wrapping it up and bringing it home, that we are constantly in the process of creating our own miracles. So we want to welcome any of you who are here for the first Sunday. If this is your first time with us. I'm Petra Weldes, Senior Minister of the Center for Spiritual Living in Dallas, and we're delighted that you found us here on the web. You can find our Sunday services on our website by every Wednesday. And we love that you can look at us online and explore these spiritual teachings. Feel free to explore our archives. It goes back a number of years with lots of special topics and amazing speakers. You can also sign up for our email news, My Daily Words, and my blog, Spiritual Living with Dr. Petra. If you're looking for a spiritual community, come visit us. Or if you're just in Dallas, drop on by. We'd love to give you a hug. Welcome home.
Breathing into the invitation that is always available to us. It is that still small voice of spirit that is always seeking to know us. And so in this moment, simply allow your heart to open that valve to release any resentments, any obstacles, any barriers, any old beliefs that keep you from your good, that stand in the way of each of us being the fullest expression of spirit right here and right now. So in this moment, the invitation is to step into the flow of allowing and receiving, of releasing and letting go. For it is in that dance of life that we come to know our fullest expressions of spirit, our deepest connection to Source, that yes, indeed, all is well. We are always and forever provided for. Every resource is made available to us. And it is in that place of deep knowingness and deep understanding of our own divinity and our own divine nature that we simply claim it right here and right now. We accept it, we know it, and we move it out into the world with love and joy, and it is good. And so for this knowingness, for the abundance of life expressing here in this community, I simply say thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And we can anchor that together in deep assuredness by saying together, and so it is.
It's not that unusual when everything is beautiful. It's just another ordinary miracle today. The sky knows when it's time to snow. Don't need to teach a seed to grow. It's just another ordinary miracle today. Life is like a gift, they say, wrapped up for you every day. Open up and find a way to give some of your own. Isn't it remarkable? Like every time a raindrop falls, it's just another ordinary miracle today. The birds in winter have their fling, but always make it home by spring. It's just another ordinary miracle today. When you wake up every day, please don't throw your dreams away. Hold them close to your heart, 'cause we're all a part of the ordinary miracle. Ordinary miracle. Do you want to see a miracle? It seems so exceptional that things just work out after all. It's just another ordinary miracle today. The sun comes out and shines so bright and disappears again at night. It's just another ordinary miracle today. It's just another ordinary miracle today.
Thank you. Thank you, Dina, Andrew, Jonathan, and Matt. Thank you so much. What a beautiful way to talk about miracles and begin with thinking about miracles in everyday life. And how extraordinary it is that life even is happening at all. And as you know, we talked about this 2 weeks ago when we were quoting Albert Einstein. We can live as if nothing is a miracle, or we can live as if everything is a miracle. And to recognize that miracles are they're not supernatural events. They are the perfect outpicturing of universal law in relationship to the serendipitous unfolding of our dreams. And miracles happen every day, and they are happening all of the time, all around us. The question is, are we participating in them? Are we thinking that it was something that happened a long time ago, or to somebody else, or maybe if we were really good or in a good space with the divine, then we might have a miracle? Or are we willing and able to really embrace the idea that we could live miracles every day, and that we're actually doing it all the time? So as we move through our shortcut to a miracle, as we really explore how is it that these ordinary miracles are happening every single day, we have been seeing how science and spirituality are meeting, whether it's quantum science, whether it's psychology, and how that's meeting with the spiritual, the deep, mystical, spiritual understanding that the mystery schools have been teaching for literally tens of thousands of years. There's a wonderful I guess it's a little bit of a joke that says when science has finally climbed to the top of the mountain, the mystics will be sitting there saying, "What in the world took you so long?" And so we're seeing that, we're beginning to see that, and so what we're really exploring is and understanding that we are engaged in the use of universal principles and universal laws at the spiritual level in exactly the same way as we are engaged in using the natural laws at the physical level. We use the law of mathematics every time we add or subtract, every time we do our banking, every time we do anything with numbers, we're using a universal law. It's called the law of mathematics. Every time we drive our car, every time we fly in an airplane, every time we simply walk across the room, we're using physical laws, and we're using them without even thinking about them because we simply know that they operate, or maybe we don't know that they operate, but they're operating nevertheless. And we're constantly using them. And if we use them deliberately, then we create new things. We use the laws of aerodynamics, and we learn to create airplanes and rockets and all kinds of things that allow us to move beyond gravity. Do you see, by understanding the laws, we actually use them to create. And so this is what we recognize as we move into this notion that we are constantly co-creating our life with the divine. As the divine moving as us, we're constantly creating our miracles if we're paying attention, if we're using the laws deliberately. Otherwise, we use them unconsciously. So what are some of these higher laws, some of these other laws, and how do they operate in life in a way that we can engage with them? And so we started this conversation 2 weeks ago, and we talked about various pieces of quantum science and how quantum science, quantum mechanics is really beginning to show us that fulcrum point where spirit turns into matter. And how we engage with that. So Andrew and I were talking after last week about this week, and he said, why don't we do the double slit experiment, which was like such a big deal in quantum physics, and I'm like, actually perform it. And well, we can't make the room dark enough to actually do that, and we don't have a photon accelerator with which to shoot the little photons. So we're going to have a little science lesson. This is a little video clip. It's a little bit long. It's about 5 minutes, so settle back. And Dustin, if we could lower the lights.
And here we are, the granddaddy of all quantum weirdness, the infamous double slit experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, And where they cancel, there is nothing. So, when we throw things, that is, matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So, they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits, and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one, and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. But physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. And it was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange, never world of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing.
So how many of you familiar with that? Did you recognize it? What the Bleep? That's a section of the movie called What the Bleep. If you haven't seen it, it's a powerful representation or explanation of this in a film. So, the double slit experiment was, on the one hand, an extraordinary opportunity for scientists to see that there is no such thing as a building block of energy. It is actually this thing that acts sometimes like a particle and sometimes like a wave, like we talked about 2 weeks ago. And what causes it to behave one way or the other is how the experiment is set up and whether or not it's being observed, how it's being observed. And that very last comment, that it is the watching that collapses the quantum into a particle that causes it to decide whether it moves in a particular way. Deepak Chopra says this: the quantum realm is the transitional realm between spirit and the material world. Remember when we talked about it, electrons are winking in and out of existence. There's only a probability of where they're going to land, just like there's only a probability of how that photon is going to move. Well, something causes that probability to become an actuality. In the universal, there's a universal law that's operating. In the level of the individual, what causes that collapse of possibility or probability into actuality? What causes spirit moving like a wave to act like a form, like matter? What causes it? The observer. The fact that we have an opportunity, an ability to observe our own lives. We have the opportunity to observe what is going on. And we observe that not with our eyes. We observe it with our consciousness. And with our consciousness, we are participating in this quantum realm. So in our book, Shortcut to a Miracle, he talks about this law of co-creation. The law of co-creation is that it is our consciousness that manifests, not the observation of our eyes, not just our thinking thoughts, oh, I'm now thinking the thought that I'd like to manifest more money, but our consciousness manifests. And what that consciousness manifests is our dominant thought. Our dominant thought is what prevails in our experience. Not just any one given thought, but our dominant thought. Now, what is this consciousness that manifests, that is holding our dominant thought? There are a number of definitions for consciousness. The state of being awake or aware of one's surroundings, right? This is our, like I'm conscious as opposed to being unconscious. Not in the hospital, sedated. I'm actually conscious. We're all conscious and aware of our own surroundings. That's one way we use that term. Another way is the awareness or perception of something by an individual. We become conscious of something. I'm conscious of this book sitting here. I'm conscious of whether it's hot or cold. Do you see? Consciousness, we become aware of something. What happens when we become aware of it? It moves into our field of observation. Again, not observation with the eyes, but observation in terms of our awareness. We are now aware of it. The fact of awareness itself by the mind of itself and of the world. Another way that we can understand consciousness, it is the field of awareness in which we have thoughts, in which we have the experience of our own lives. It is that field of awareness. Deepak Chopra, he says we can find that field of awareness in the gap between our thoughts, right? We go in through the gap between our thoughts, and there is a field in which our thoughts are happening, in which our feelings are happening, in which our physical experience is happening. That is our consciousness. Interesting and supportive, and it feels good to be around them. And then there's others where it's like, wow, this is like really a drain, and they don't even have to open their mouths. That's the sum total of the consciousness field, and we're all living in one. We're all living in our own, and it is the dominant thought patterns, the dominant thoughts that prevail. So where do these dominant thoughts live? How do we engage in them? If consciousness manifests and the dominant thoughts prevail, we need to begin to pay attention to what our dominant thoughts are. So when we talk about consciousness, we know that from science of mind, and we know from psychology and from science, that there are two states of consciousness that we experience. This one state of consciousness is conscious awareness. This is the awake, alert state. I can think about what I'm thinking about. I can think about a feeling that I'm having. I can have a reaction to something that's going on, and I can think, wait a minute, that feels like an old reaction of something that happened in my childhood. Do I really want to behave this way? Do you see? I can think about it. I can pay attention to it. And then we have the subjective realm. The subjective realm, which is all of those habitual ways of seeing and thinking and knowing and believing and experiencing life that are living in our subconscious mind or subjective mind, as we talk about it in New Thought, subject to that conscious thought, but now it's below the level of consciousness. And if we think of our brains a little bit like a computer, these are all the programs that are running in the background, all those annoying things that make your computer get slower and slower and slower and slower and slower and grind it to a halt. And that's actually what's happening. That's what's happening in our subjective mind. We have, if you'll see, it's like an iceberg. Like an iceberg, 90% of it is below the level of consciousness. It's below the level of conscious awareness. And yet it's what's creating our dominant thought pattern. It's whatever in the sum total of it is creating our dominant thought pattern is what prevails. Now, our conscious mind is that place where we embrace the spiritual aspect of choice, being able to, we have free will. We have the ability to make choices and think about things and observe them and make decisions and inquire, is this really true? Is this really so? Is this really how it is? And we have the opportunity to imagine something new that we've never experienced before. These are the ways, this is our conscious state of our consciousness. Now, our subjective state of consciousness can't actually do any of those things. Our subjective state of consciousness just houses all of those habitual thoughts and all of those experiences and all of those memories, and it simply continually recreates that in our world of experience. It is in our subjective mind that is the place where the universal law is operating. Not in our conscious mind, in our subjective mind. Now, this is why we can have, well, I'm going to actually read this to you because I think he says this really well. So then, where's the rub? The rub is that our subjective mind receives all the thoughts, experiences, and reactions that have ever been in our conscious mind. And much of that is negative. Although we may not realize it, the dominant thoughts contained in our subjective mind are often far more negative than we imagine. So what we experience in our lives is often far more negative than we want. And in many cases, our lives themselves are far more negative and unrewarding than we want to experience. Not because we're consciously choosing it, but because somewhere along the line, some experience, thought, and belief became housed like that program running in the background. And it comes from who knows where. I can remember it when I was in first grade. I think I must have come to first grade with a German accent. And there was an elderly woman who was the first grade teacher, and she must have lost somebody in the war. It's the only explanation I ever had as an adult for why a teacher would behave the way she behaved towards me. I lost my two front teeth during first grade. And so she delighted in calling me toothless. And that's how she would call me to the board. Toothless, come up here, do this math problem. Oh yeah, I felt confident, didn't I? And then I couldn't do the math problem. And she would ridicule me standing in front of the class. She would ridicule me and say, well, toothless, well that's just stupid. How could you do it that way? Don't you know it goes this way? I can remember in first grade hiding my head under the table, under the desk. You have those desks that go up? Hiding my head under the desk because I knew that I was just irredeemably stupid. And I began to believe that. Now, thank goodness I had a second grade teacher who saw something different in me. And all year she said to me, oh, you can do this. Oh yeah, you're smart enough to do this. You can do this math problem, no problem. I believe in you. I know you can do this. And by the end of second grade, can you believe that I came within a hair's breadth of flunking out of first grade? Really? I mean, how is that possible? Anyway, I did. I came with a hair's breadth of flunking out of first grade. By the end of second grade, I was like, oh, I can do this. Do you see, I was still impressionable enough. First of all, I completely believed my first grade teacher, but I was still impressionable enough, thank God, that I completely believed my second grade teacher. And all of that becomes lodged. Do you see, those are the things that become lodged in our subjective mind. And that becomes the filter through which we observe life, isn't it? And what did we see? That our observation, it is our observation, not with our eyes, but with our consciousness, that collapses reality. So the field of consciousness contains random thoughts. Thank God they don't all get manifested. Right? Thank God they don't all get manifested. Random thoughts that flit in and out, and they're just random as long as you don't get hooked on them, no big deal, and you can say delete or cancel or oh no, that's not true, and you just push them on by. Habitual thoughts, these thoughts that we've been talking about are habitual thoughts. And finally, trained thoughts. Our trained thoughts are those thoughts which is essentially what my second grade teacher was doing with me. She was reprogramming my subjective mind. She was using her trained thought to reprogram my subjective mind. And at second grade, we're still impressionable enough. Actually, surprisingly, it's surprising statistically how impressionable your teenagers are. Don't ever think they're not listening to you. They are listening with every ounce of their being. And they are as impressionable as teenagers as they were as 2-year-olds. And somewhere along the line, we then have to begin to do that for ourselves. In psychology, it's called reparenting. We reparent ourselves, we give to ourselves, and we teach ourselves, and we tell ourselves with our trained thought, truth, spiritual truth, instead of this habitual nonsense that we have taken on somewhere along the line. Now, our habitual thoughts are the beliefs that create the mold that the subjective mind uses. Our habitual thoughts are those things that we simply believe to be true about the world. It's the way that we look at the world. And as we read, surprisingly, unless we've done a lot of work to clear that out, that is unfortunately surprisingly negative. From our family, from the culture, from the way in which we were raised, don't bite off more than you can chew, don't brag, who do you think you are? Well, really, you're going to do that? All of those messages we have stored if we haven't done the work with our trained thought to change them. And so these beliefs are the mold that this universal law uses. I thought this was a fascinating statistic. I didn't really like it, but it's worth taking a look at. We have tens of thousands of thought every day. Tens of thousands of thoughts every day. Boom, 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 boom. Habitual thoughts, random thoughts, boom, 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 going on. Tens of thousands of them. 90% of them are the same things that we thought yesterday. Wow. That is the 90% that's the bottom of the iceberg that's in our subjective mind. 90% are the things that we thought yesterday. We're thinking about the same problem. We're thinking about the same person. We're obsessing about the same conversation. We're thinking about how we're not doing it right. All of those things. 90% of them are the same things that we thought of the day before. Gesundheit. Now, the other thing is that in addition to that is we tend to think the same kind of thought about different things. We tend to think the same kind of thought about different things. So if our tendency is to think the thought of, well, this is going to be hard, do you see, it doesn't matter what thing we're addressing. Doing my checkbook is going to be hard. Having this conversation is going to be hard. Being successful in my business is going to be hard. Do you see? We tend to think the same kind of thoughts about different things. That's what's in that 90% in the subjective mind that is the mold of our life experience. And here's the kicker. This comes out of the shortcut to a miracle. Your inner self-talk is pounding your belief system into place, moment by moment, word by word, thought by thought. Thomas Troward calls them grooves of thought, the habitual things that we think. The scientists today, they say those synapses that fire together, wire together. So over and over and over again, we think I can't do it, or I'm afraid, or I don't know how, or this is too hard, or I'm confused, or I'm uncertain, or whatever our habitual way of engaging in the world is. Every time we think that, we are fusing those synapses together again and again and again and again. Now, the good news is that this is a completely reversible condition. Completely reversible. They've shown this time and time and time and time again, that these synapses that have fired together and have now become wired together, they're only wired together out of habit. As new thoughts are created, new neural pathways are created, these begin to uncouple as they aren't activated, as the synaptic activation doesn't happen, as the electrical magnetic impulse doesn't move through them, they actually begin to uncouple over time. And we can create new synaptic pathways, new neural pathways in our neural net. So if our inner self-talk is pounding our belief system into place moment by moment, word by word, thought by thought, wouldn't it be great if we pounded spiritual truth into ourselves with our self-talk? Amen. Yes. What if we were obsessed with God? What if we obsessed over how abundant our lives were, how happy we were, how things work out, how lovely it is to be around the people that we care about, and how things move and unfold? What if our self-talk was, I'm allowing Spirit to guide me, I'm allowing love to be to show me, I'm allowing joy to be the way I show up? If we were pounding in to our habitual brains what we wanted. Do you see? This is simply the way it works. It's not good or bad. It's just the way it works. Are we consciously participating with it to have it work for our benefit and the benefit of those around us? Or are we simply allowing it to be the way it always has been? Let me assure you, we are going to talk to ourselves. This will not change. And we will run our lives on the habitual thought atmosphere, mental atmosphere, dominant thoughts that are in our subjective mind. This will not change. So what can we change? What we are paying attention to. What we are thinking about. We can pay attention to our self-talk and pound something entirely different into our subjective mind. And why is that important? Because it is our subjective mind that is the filter with which we observe life. And what happens when we observe life? We collapse the quantum field into that reality. And so the chain is conscious, trained thought, building new habitual belief systems which the subjective mind and the universal law uses as the mold, the filter with which to see life, which impacts the quantum itself and collapses it into the actual experience we're having. Thank you. And the mystics have been saying this for 10,000 years. They've been to all the mystery schools. Okay, so what is the shortcut to the miracle? What is your shortcut to a miracle? This is the secret. This is the secret mystery. This is the secret that they have been that they've been initiating people in for thousands of years in ancient Egypt and all the ancient schools. This is the mystery. This is it. Are you ready? Wow. That's it. Learn how to properly use your mind. Learn how to properly use your mind. Your mind, your consciousness is your greatest asset. The mental field, the consciousness, which is the field of everything you think, feel, emotions, experiences, all of it together is our consciousness. Our consciousness is the greatest asset we have. Or it's been our greatest liability. But it's our consciousness. Do you see? The structure of it is the way it is. The way it works is the way it works. What's inside of it? That's up to us. Do you see? That's our part. Is the using of the structure, the understanding of it, and what we fill it with. So, what is the practice? This deep mystery. Learn to properly use your mind. Now, here you go. I'm going to give you the deepest spiritual practice I know. This is the mystery of all miracles, and it is the way. It is the way that has been taught for thousands of years. You ready? Think only about what you want, not about what you don't want.
And it works every time?
And it works every time. Thank you, Linda. It's very simple. Nobody pretends that it's easy to do. Every spiritual practice is a discipline to teach you how to do this. Every spiritual practice. I don't care whether you're a Catholic or a Buddhist, science of mind, whether you do treatment or meditation, or whether you walk your meditations, or whether you do yoga, or whether you do the adoration of the sacrament, doesn't matter. Every single spiritual practice of every kind is designed to teach you how to do this. So when we say do spiritual practice, and we have 5 spiritual practices here: visioning, meditation, treatment, sacred service, and sacred giving, or tithing. Those are outer forms. Those are disciplined. What shall we say? It's like going to the gym. Right? Those are the activities that we do to strengthen the muscle that allows us to do this. To think about what we want to think about and not think about what we don't want to think about. So when those habitual ideas begin to rise, and we all of a sudden are observing our life through the consciousness, through the lens of not enoughness, we can say, no, that's not the spiritual truth. I'm not going to observe my life through the lens of not enoughness. I'm going to observe my life through the lens of Spirit absolutely supports me, and it always works out. Do you see? That is the spiritual practice. That is the single, fundamental, most profound secret that there is. And yes, it's very simple. I can teach you how to do it, in 15 minutes. It takes us a lifetime of practice. There's a lovely quote, I have it, I don't want to go back and look for it, so I'll paraphrase it. But the quote was that I found the other day, said, think a positive thought so much that eventually your brain thinks it back to you. That's what we're taught when we're taught pray without ceasing. Do you see, we're habituating our consciousness to see life in a certain way. And when we see it that way, we are literally collapsing reality to conform to that. And we start making miracles. Like, wow, isn't that amazing how it works out? Isn't that amazing how that worked out? Isn't that, and so let me just tell you, okay, so this 20-minute talk, that was the first half of the first chapter of this section 2. Holy mackerel is right, okay? So there's a whole lot more in section 2. So I really want to invite you Wednesday night. Tracy Brown is going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into this material. Get the book, read the book. It's super easy to read, but oh my gosh, boom, 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 reminding us of these things. And so come Wednesday night and really go deeper into this, learning how to do this. Take classes, do your affirmations, do any spiritual practice. Because we're learning to be in charge of our consciousness so that we can make miracles. And then you, like all the other people in our community who are putting TSRW on Facebook and texting me, TSRW, this stuff really works, if you work it. Let us pray. So taking a deep breath, we go within, and it is in our prayer that we work it. What do? We remind ourselves of truth. God is present, Spirit is love, life is for us, the universe is unfolding as it should, and it is good, and we're a part of it. You and me and all beings everywhere, all people across the face of the planet, we're all part of this loving cosmos that is expressing itself, as beautiful as the flowers, as joyous as the hummingbird, as stately as the mountain. Each one of us is a place where that life is coming to be as each one of us. And we are participating in that. So this morning we make a commitment. We make a commitment to see life with the positive eyes, to seek out the ways in which love is revealing itself in our lives, to be the place of joy, that we may absolutely bring that into the world. This morning, we dedicate ourselves to collapsing the quantum field into a world that works, not only for us, but for all beings everywhere. And we know that as we do so, the universal law simply says yes and makes it so. And so it is.